Yeah, just scroll us. He's taking the website down. If I can't be there, no one can. Yeah, yeah, that's I think on the little guide too. That's the logo, right? Oh, the doors are closing. The doors are closing.
You're gonna take a picture of Greg, just we need to say elephants.
Don't say the F word.
Greg, did you get your silver elephant back?
Huh?
You did? Okay, cool.
No.
Nah. Oh. Is this thing on?
Yeah.
It is. Okay. So just give me a shout when it's being recorded. It is?
Ciao.
Awesome. Okay. So, hi and welcome to the UC Architects live at MEC. So today I'll be hosting the show because unfortunately, good Steve and Pat didn't make it to MEC. I know it's very unfortunate. But today I'm joined by a bunch of fellow UC architects and two guests. So here's Michel Leroy, Dave Stork, John Cook, the most dangerous man in the West, Serkan Varaglu. We have Paul Cunningham and our guests, Brian Day, Greg Taylor, and Jeff Guillet. So I think by now you should know who the UC architects are. I'm not going to reintroduce them, but I'm going to ask our guests to briefly tell them what they do or ought to be doing, so that everyone knows ought to be doing.
Ought to be doing is probably the better approach. I'm Brian Day. I'm a senior program manager in the Exchange customer adoption team within our customer experience group. I ought to be helping make deployments for Exchange easier for our on-premises customers and hybrid customers, et cetera, to hopefully remove a lot of the headaches you guys might interact every now and then.
Greg Taylor, customer adoption, the same team as Brian. I can't eloquently put nearly as well as Brian, but yeah, our team is very much around dealing with some of our largest and most interesting customers and developing guidance and white papers and helping develop the product.
And it should be pointed out that Brian is Greg's minion.
No, there's your first edit point for you.
I'm Jeff Guillet. I'm MVP, MCM, CISSP, MACKEY. I am a principal systems architect for Extra Team in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Okay, so now that you kind of know who's on the panel today, they couldn't have placed this session better than the last session from MEC, because that gives us the opportunity to talk about what we saw this week, good and bad, and we saw a lot of good things. So maybe ask a question, Brian or Greg. What was your favorite moment at MEC this week?
This is the awkward silence that you'll end it on later.
When the clock ran out in the public folder session.
Okay. Anyone else? Any thoughts about MEC this week?
Great show. That's it.
I thoroughly enjoyed this week. It was great. Today especially was fabulous. I liked the Exchange deployment panel. That was really fun. That was a big highlight for me. Just good times. I wish it was longer.
I, on the other hand, don't wish it was longer because I'm exhausted at this stage. No, I've had a brilliant week. It's terrific to see so many familiar faces and old friends and people I've worked with for years. Keynote was a lot of fun. The videos, I think, in the keynote were a whole bunch of fun.
Outstanding.
Okay, and I got to tell you, I haven't had the opportunity to visit any other sessions this week. I've been rather busy. So I can't wait to hear what other sessions everyone enjoyed, and then I can go and watch them after the fact.
Okay, cool. So, MEC has been full of sessions, but there are some things that we see trending. Maybe some things that we should discuss. And I got a list of thoughts that we threw together, mainly Paul, and sent it out to the DL. So thanks, Paul. And the first topic is Yammer. Ooh, I dropped the bomb here.
Drinking game.
So, Paul, you have some thoughts on that?
I do, and I'll be honest, I wasn't excited about Yammer. What I got interested in during the keynote and some of the sessions afterwards was the Yammer-like features that they started to reveal through OWA. And
So, for the people who cannot see, right here just appeared in the Yammer.
we have the two fans of Yammer, well, the Light and Day of Yammer here, I guess. I mean, it's pretty, look, I come from Australia. Australian Tech Ed covers what American Tech Ed covers, which is every Microsoft, IT Pro topic and new announcement and that sort of thing. So we get about 4 or 5 sessions, whatever Scott Schnell can pull off in a week. And so to come here, I mean, this is absolutely incredible. You have a whole conference dedicated to one product set, and you can have a whole session just on the new groups and just on clutter. I mean, that's incredible, and it was really interesting to see how those features from Yammer are making their way into the service at first, and making their way in a useful way. And I think, I'll be honest, making their way in there in a way that's more appropriate for the enterprise and better than, let's take clutter for example. Gmail's done priority inbox and the 3, social and newsletter type inboxes, which is not a good experience. But the way that they're implementing clutter in OWA makes a lot of sense. So I think, what we've seen is despite nobody I've spoken to particularly enjoying the idea of going to the Yammer client to do Yammer-like things, but seeing them come into the feature set, the product set is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'll just say, just a show of hands, who likes Yammer as a Yammer client, or who got really excited about the features like I was just describing? Just a show. Who was excited about the Yammer?
That many.
Half the room. So there's a bit of interest there. I think it's pretty cool.
Well, to be honest, I'm maybe a little bit known about my Yammer viewpoint.
Perspective?
Yeah, my perspective on Yammer. But I did like the interaction on the sessions through Yammer, not the Yammer client, but the fact that you had the slides on Yammer available while you were presenting. People were using them. I even got a few questions through Yammer, which I got an email for to let me know that I had a message on Yammer. Other than that, that was pretty cool. I mean, I agree with Paul a lot that it's cool that these features are going to come into our tools that we use on a daily basis, and I wholeheartedly agree. It's kind of weird saying that because I really dislike Yammer as a client. But yeah, no, in general, it's a really good thing that's happening. So.
Yeah, I did like the second screen. I used it on all the sessions, on the ones that were available. The problem for me on the Yammer is the interface on, for example, Windows 8 client, right? You want to use it on Windows 8 client, and it's, to be honest, it's not a good interface, not usable. It's hard to navigate through, see the updates and all those things. Apart from that, on the IE, when you look at it, it looks cool, especially with MEC, and the groups on Yammer were fun. Yesterday they had the selfie with John, which did create a lot of attention. And oh, you missed it. Everyone was going to John Horton and taking a selfie and posting on Yammer. I think that ruined his day, but it was fun. I mean, I saw people just rushing to him and trying to take a picture with him.
So, we yammered enough. I guess we can say a lot about Yammer, but one thing is sure that the phenomenon of social enterprise is happening, and it's happening in various ways. The announcement of Office Graph recently is one of the examples. So a few features were announced this week. People view clutter, as Paul already mentioned, groups view. How do you feel about them? So Paul already expressed his like about any of these features, but Greg, what do you feel about it?
Are you thinking Yammer and social features in general?
I mean, finding their way into the product.
So we're all at a rather interesting kind of crossroads, right? We've all been doing, and personally, I've been doing email for a long, long time. I think what's interesting is if you think about, it's not an either or, as far as I'm concerned, right? And I think Paul said it. You all said it, which is how features and functionality, the best of both. If we end up in a best of both kind of world, right? Email is still by far, the best way to communicate some types of information, and Yammer has an entirely different way of working, but solving the same kind of problems. And really, the question is going to be, which of those alternative methods end up being the ones that users choose, the ones that users want to use, right? And I remember having this interesting discussion for the Yammer folks. It's a different way of working. It really is a different way of working, and they'll say things like that kids today don't know how to use email because they all just know how to use Facebook. And my response to that has always been, well, kids today don't know how to use our internal expenses application either, but when they join Microsoft, if they want to get paid back for their expenses, they'll figure that out fairly fast. So I don't think it's a case of either or. I think we're at a really interesting point. I think there's some fascinating technologies that they have, and different ways of working. And in an ideal world, I would like to stay working in Outlook, because I'm pretty good with that. But if I can work seamlessly with somebody who wants to use Yammer or another style of interface, and we can both essentially use the client of choice that works best for us, then I'm all for it. I think that's fine. I don't know if that answers your question, but I was trying to be evasive.
We couldn't tell. No, sure. There's been a lot of announcements this week. Well, a few new features coming, and one of them I know that someone within our group feels very passionate about.
Why do I have a microphone already?
Well, some people might know what's coming out, but the OA app for Android. So John, what's your take?
It's a great thing. It's a great platform, and everyone should adopt it because it's inevitable.
Have you been drinking?
My PayPal account is. Yeah, I mean, it's good. I mean, obviously, if people listen to the podcast, no, I'm not exactly what you call a Google fanboy of any kind or Android. But I mean, obviously, there was a time when it seemed like there was two Microsofts. One that was trying to tie everything to the Windows platform, and then the other side that was trying to say, hey, we make great software, let's have it on all platforms. So I think it's a good thing to have all of these experiences, common experiences across all the platforms. I'm a marketing guy, don't I? But I mean, I think it's a good thing. It's a good thing to get out there. Same with Link. Link client on Android's good. It's got to be there if you want to have it available to as many people as you can.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, because the ActiveSync implementation in Android doesn't have a good reputation. Same like iOS has some issues. So I was already hoping that when the OA for iPad and iPhone came out, that there would be a version for Android. So now it's here. That makes me happy. So less hassle with ActiveSync issues. So next on the list is Windows Phone, I believe.
Well, don't you think that the native app mail functionality in Windows Phone is kind of the same thing?
No. Well, the remote wipe in ActiveSync,
the container aspect.
But also the some of the features, just like shared calendars, for instance, and some of the OA apps that can work in OA for devices. So I still see a lot of benefits for a OA for Windows Phone or any platform.
So here's an interesting thought. Paul, you have some experience with Mobile Iron, right?
Yes.
So do you think that launching these applications might, kind of undermine part of the market that these applications exist for, because Mobile Iron is used heavily for securing, I would say iOS, but it was actually more Android related, because it does a pretty bad job at it natively. But by having native apps, it kind of undermines the use for Mobile Iron, doesn't it? Or what's your take?
If you're talking about the container aspect, yes. If you're talking about some of the other good things that an MDM can give you, like let's take device access rules. You can't wildcard device access rules or set conditions like, only connect if iOS greater than 7.06. You can't do that as one rule. You would have to set a block for every version from 7.05 down, which is becoming a lot of versions. Whereas an MDM gives you a simple policy way of specifying that. So I think MDMs still have their place, but it's a pretty volatile market as well. In my experience, they're deploying new builds and new features almost as rapidly as Office 365, and it's still a bit volatile. I think that some businesses would prefer just the simple containerization, and for that, the OA apps are close to the right thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. So another thing that was, to me, a big thing, a big direction for the future is OneDrive for businesses, and tying that into Exchange for attachments and getting rid of attachments finally. So, anyone, thoughts? Spit it out.
I was wondering how much that is driven by the storage bill of running Office 365.
Not at all. No, come on. Isn't it? It's interesting though. It's great to get to a point where after, I remember customers asking for that ability 10 years ago or more. And the demo that we saw in the keynote, the ability to be able to just attach stuff and share it by OneDrive, I think it's amazing. Really cool.
It sort of reminds me of the single instance storage idea.
Yeah.
Did you have a central
M-Drive.
Friends don't let friends scan the M-Drive.
So, Brian, you've been quite quiet so far.
Trying.
So, kind of going back to the on-prem version of Exchange, there's a lot of guidance being put out there this week. I mean, we've been waiting for let me put it differently. We've had lots of updates on the sizing guidance changes and stuff. Is it because you see that there's more deployments of Exchange, so 2013 out there now, or why wait until now to kind of put some of that information out there?
Well, so what have we heard so far this week for those that haven't been here? We've had the new page file guidance, we've had the CPU guidance for MAPI over HTTP, and is there anything new? I didn't get to attend Jeff's session.
No, it's pretty much that, but some of them can be fairly large changes. It kind of happened all of a sudden. We didn't see that coming, so I can see how some people might be confused about it or surprised. But we also got information about recommendations how you should deploy Exchange. It's never been so clear out there. Ross said you should be deploying for nose on a DAG. Before it was you could, and we think that's a good solution. Now it's really like you really should do that. I also had a few Microsoft people point out WNLB, even though it's kind of a public secret, but now it's out there. We don't want you to do that, period.
WNLB, I think, if you speak to most of the Microsoft people, I think we've done a pretty consistent job of saying you get what you pay for with that one. I guess you also get what you pay for with WAP now too, but that's a bit better. With regards to when stuff does come out, it probably takes a lot longer to finalize a lot of this guidance than people really do realize. And there's a lot of work with the changes that go into these builds, and with Service Pack 1 finally having mapped your HTTP. We then uncover other things. You probably heard a lot of guidance this week on if you're going to use it, absolutely use .NET 4.5.1. Right, that's got a lot of things in it. And sometimes it really comes down to a culmination of a lot of different components needing to be out there and available for you guys before we can release some of the guidance. Or there's always this big hockey stick of adoption when the service pack finally comes out for 2013. And that gives us some time to see how things go during the RTM stage, C1, 2, 3, and essentially 4, Service Pack 1, that we can then kind of take a step back and say, all right, is everything working as expected? Has anything that we've done throughout the different cumulative updates now, is it easy now to consolidate it that we're at the Service Pack level as another build of guidance? If we were in the business of releasing new guidance every quarter with every cumulative update comes out, none of us would be able to keep up with it. And there might not be enough in there to really affect the guidance overall. Whereas there might be minor fixes here and there that come out in the cumulative update, and okay, maybe it dropped CPU 1% in this component and 0.5% in this component, but it's not enough to go back and say, do we retweak everything to tell everybody what to do? But once those things add up to a point where there's something good here to talk about, or something new to talk about, like the CPU increase with NAPUHD, get a little bit more CPU to get the other benefits. You just have to make a decision when the time is right. And it's a complicated process, that's for sure. I'm sure you could keep Jeff busy for hours and hours talking about what goes into that. But it probably does look like, well, why don't you tell us sooner? But sometimes there's just a large checklist of things that really have to come together, and it's not always easy to get things out at once.
Okay.
Did I evade that well enough?
Well, it depends, let's say. Not sure.
Well, I think it was cool this time around too that we got Service Pack 1 for change, and we also got the client side, so we didn't have another situation where here's the new bits, but you can't use them until we don't know when, because you have to wait for the client side. So it's cool this time to get it all at once.
I thought, apart from the consistent message about multi-role servers, that the consistent message about lag copies was also there. And I'm curious, who, just put your hand up, do you already run lag copies now? Like a quarter of the room?
It's like 10 people.
Not even that?
It's like 10 people in the room.
Italian?
I'm very tired. After this conference, who intends to design for lag copies in the future? More people. Did I get that right? So I think that was quite useful. Personally for myself, that was, I think, quite useful. But there's still a mystery to a lot of people, and the documentation is minimal. It's sufficient, I guess, to do the job. Probably the most important part of the message I got was that, frankly, if you are doing a lag copy activation, you're in a pretty bad place, and a Microsoft support call is appropriate. And I think that's been a key message as well that comes through, that lag copies and that Microsoft support actually go hand in hand. And that's, I guess, the way we should plan in the future.
Well, I find the message of when you're in that kind of extended recovery, well, if you can call it extended recovery, but if you are down to deep poo-poo and you have to call PSS support, I find that a little weird message, because typically it's been like, hey, there's really good documentation. Let's be fair, the documentation on TechNet is pretty good on this topic. The message was still, and I don't know who it was, said, well, I really want you to call PSS at that point in time. And that was kind of, I'm not saying weird, but it's the first time that I got that message so clear about something. So is there a specific reason, maybe?
I would say the complexity of the problem and the likelihood you'll be doing that at 3 a.m. kind of leads to maybe mistakes that would be irreversible. So it's good to have someone guide you through and make sure that you're activating the lag in an appropriate way and not getting up to the point where you need to be and not past the point where you've tipped over and you've got the logical corruption again.
I'm not sure. I mean, anything's really changed. Thinking about it, I mean, in the sense of, I remember years ago, I mean, you're dealing with huge data sizes and data sets, and any operation you do takes a considerable amount of time. And I remember a case when I was in consulting years ago, where you're dealing with 50 gig database files on Exchange 5.5 servers that was 60, and you were trying to copy them to make a backup of them just in case you made a mess of it. And it took 8 hours to file copy it from one machine to another. And I took the view, even then, I'm calling somebody to get me to hold my hand through this, right? Because I'm probably only going to get to do this once, and you know, time is of the essence. So, I mean, has it really changed?
I don't feel that it's being called out like that typically, but it could be just the Belgians. Okay, well, that in such a scenario you would expect to have someone on staff, unless you don't have that takes care of that, because typically calling support means spending extra money. And I do get, spending money to get your data back is
Cost
a good
benefit.
thing. Yes,
Right.
I do get that.
Value for money? Probably if you get all the data back, yeah.
Yeah, sure, but why put all the effort into putting the information out there if you want them to call regardless?
For those reasons. I mean, I think we do an amazing job documenting those kind of things, and to try and help customers help themselves. I mean, our goal is to try and help our customers help themselves where possible, and then we're there to back them up when they need us.
Okay, that's fair. So we were talking about some of the announcements, and I attended a session this afternoon about a certain client called Outlook finally catching up after 10 years on multi-factor authentication. So any thoughts on that? Or am I the only one, really?
Oh, I know for certain that some customers will be very happy with that ability, especially I've encountered some customers that don't deploy Outlook Anywhere to the internet because of the lack of multi-factor authentication. So when I heard that or saw it on Twitter, I was kind of excited. So yeah.
Given that I'm really one of the only ones who's interested in this. So okay, who in the audience thinks that's a good thing? That's about more than half of the room. No, it's really a good thing. I get that question quite regularly, not only from a multi-factor authentication point of view, but also the single sign-on part. Especially, some scenarios where that basic auth is really pesky. I mean, you move to Office 365, it's lots of benefits, and then you get that prompt, which is okay-ish. I mean, you put in your password, you save the password, but kind of beats the purpose of having a password. And there's pros and cons, and we can argue about that, but I mean, it's good to have other options, especially where in a world where passwords are, old school, they're becoming old school. There's a limitation in Office 365, which I'm very unhappy about, like a password can only be 16 characters. And if that's the only option to protect sensitive data, I mean, from a password point of view, even if you make it complex, it opens up some opportunities to kind of take abuse of that. So it's a really good thing that it's coming, and it's one thing to have that feature, and to bring us to the next topic. The announcements, everything was like, hey, we're building this, and I'm really excited about it, and then the announcement was like, we're building this for Office 365. And then the question comes, how about on-premises? And it's coming, which is good, but it's coming like in 2015, which is a year from now. So I have to wait a year longer to have it on premises. And I'm okay with it because, I'm half in the cloud with my heads anyway. I do most of the time hybrid deployments, so I'm okay with it. But some of these guys don't really do lots of exchange online, do they?
I don't do any, really. I have one mailbox and that's mine. It works great. Really great. Do we have a on-prem or online sort of crowd here? I don't know. Do you want to?
Okay, so who's an on-prem crowd? Oh. I would say that's about 5 people.
Everybody.
That's about 5 people in the room, right? And who's an online kind of person? Okay. Well, hybrid, yeah. Okay, that's cool. Actually, I was talking to some people in the hallway. For instance, I love hybrid for some reason. And who was at MEC 2012? A lot of people. If you attended some of the hybrid sessions back then, and there weren't as many as now, there weren't many people in those rooms. However, if you attended any of the hybrid sessions at MEC 2014, they were full. So it's really something where we're going though, and it's a good thing. I mean, it gives you the ability to dip your toes in the water with little effort. Literally 75 minutes, that's all it takes. For some reason. A little insider joke. But there's a trend, even though it's maybe not as fast as some would, but there's definitely a trend going on. But still, the message is cloud first, and I'm personally okay with that. But given the numbers, and they're not lying, like, there is a huge on-premises crowd. There's like a few online customers in this room. I'm not saying it's in general. There's quite a bunch of hybrid people. So.
Well, I mean, I had one comment first before I answer that, which is that with as somebody presenting material as well, we've had a lot more questions from customers in hybrid, right? There's a surprisingly much larger amount, which is great to see. I mean, clearly, a lot of the hands that went up for on-prem, they probably also have, many of them dip their toes, you said, and they've got hybrid as well. The strategy from our side is, and I've talked about it in a couple of sessions this week as well, which is that our feature development is, features end up faster in the cloud because of the way that our software is developed. We have an ongoing train of development, and builds get rolled out into Office 365 on a really regular basis. And so the cloud is where our features are going to appear first. There is no question about that. And then the features that make sense to end up back in on-prem and can work in on-prem, that are on-prem type features, they will appear, but the very nature of the development process is such that they will lag behind. And it's clear that that's where our innovation is shown first. It doesn't mean that's where the innovation is only happening. It's just that's where it's going to show up first. And if you want the latest and see what the newest things that we're doing are, it's going to be in online every single time now.
So you said something interesting that triggered a question.
Right.
Yeah, actually everything you say is interesting. You said if it makes sense, it'll find its way in the on-premises environment, which is reasonable to say.
Features you're talking about, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So one feature which some people might find useful, but at the same time kind of not really making any sense at all, managed availability.
Okay.
So
you're saying that managed availability isn't really any use for on-prem customers? The ability to recover automatically from a whole range of problems? You don't think it's a good thing?
I didn't say that. I didn't say
Well,
that.
it sounded like it.
I said that something.
It sounded like to me you want stuff to just break and then admin will figure out what the hell to do about it.
I'm a consultant.
So to add a perspective to the managed availability question, from talking to people, the sense I get is that for on-prem customers, managed availability is causing more problems than solving problems at the moment. And that could be, thank you. That could be because the solving of problems is happening invisibly and they don't know. So that's not bubbling to the top as a report that says this week I saved you from 100 outages. And it could be because the documentation is what it is at the moment. And that's an area I will give full credit to the Exchange content team. Scott, I've got you. That they write some of the best documentation I find on TechNet. But managed availability is the section I go into the most and find this content has not yet been published for a topic, for a probe, for a model, whatever. So I think that still leaves too much blindness to the benefit of managed availability for on-premises customers. So really that's more of a perception problem that Microsoft
Yeah, and there's I see a lot of pushback. Some of these customers are nuts in terms of their changeable process and the concept of servers just rebooting themselves without going through a cab and 18 levels of tape are just not going to happen in a lot of companies, and they're flipped out by it, quite honestly. So
I think it's a little bit lack of understanding. Don't get me wrong, it's a great feature. Being able to automatically recover, it's awesome, but it's a black box, it's a black hole.
Yeah, It is to some degree. I'll go there, and I think we've made efforts to write. I know we've done blog posts, a bunch of stuff in that regard, and documentation for a complex system like that is probably going to be quite complex on its own. I think we could. It certainly sounds like we could do a better job of that, and I think that we'll take that as fair criticism and feedback. And ultimately, you're right. I mean, the managed availability has its greatest benefit probably in large scale rather than small scale, or less, rigidly controlled systems like John was saying, right? But I'm hoping that I hope we would agree that the overall benefit, the overall net effect of what we're trying to accomplish with it is really there to benefit the on-prem admin as well. I mean, it's, we're not trying to make it harder, it's meant to be helpful. And I think for the majority of cases it is, but there's noise that it can do, and it's a complex thing to manage. So we'll take that as fair feedback and see what we can do to clarify some of the documentation.
Perfect, thank you.
There you go. Didn't say when though.
Here's my next question, when?
Brian?
2 p.m.
Not today, as Jeff would say.
Yeah, not today. Yeah, very good.
I figured. We're halfway the recording, and we ran out of topics on Paul's OneNote, and my colleagues have been very quiet today. So
I'll flag a topic if you want.
yeah, please do so.
Some of you may have read recently there's a little bit of online discussion about Exchange on NFS volumes. Now, I'm happy to be corrected. This is only my view. Nobody who is an Exchange customer has said to me that they want to run Exchange on NFS volumes. The only people I've heard it from is VMware consultants, storage vendors who sell NFS solutions. Throw your hands up right now if you'd love to run your Exchange databases on NFS volumes. I think you're joking. Or you may be serious. So there you go. So I'm glad that the topic came up.
So for everyone, just to interrupt you, there was literally one person.
Literally one person.
That raised his hand.
And he may be just taking the piss.
No. Technically, I'd like it to be on Hyper-V, so that it's virtualized out of Hyper-V and
NFS on Hyper-V.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I can do it natively in NetApp rather than having to use ISO because.
He's using these words. NetApp.
Yes, NetApp. NetApp kind of okay.
Okay, so that was rather having NFS support in Hyper-V. I don't know how
It's the same thing.
Hyper-V guys would feel about that, and I'm not going to comment about it because I know nothing about NFS. Literally, but I'm going to echo you.
That was a great example of a specific supportability or recommendation type issue that was called out at this conference. That was excellent. Excellent for that to come out clearly. You can't miss that. You can't miss it now.
Yeah, that's correct. That's kudos to Jeff, who's back in the room. He took quite some time to explain why it is a good idea and all the issues. So thank you for that.
And additionally, we had this discussion on our internal deal of the UC architect as one of the comments that came up. There was quite a lot of fuzz about it. If you saw some of the comments, the tweeting, the messages on the Exchange ID Scale website, they were pretty passionate about it, of having NFS support in Exchange. But in the end, I don't see any of these people here, which would have been the best opportunity to interact with Microsoft and some of the people making the guidance and talking about it, knowing why it shouldn't be done. Yet I don't see any of them here. So are they really serious, or did they just want to create a little bit of fuzz? I don't know, but to me it seems like a missed opportunity for them.
Yeah, certainly. But the one thing I wanted to add, and it was a good general point, that why would you do something for just a few people, invest in supportability and investigation of a technique when you can invest the same amount of money in different techniques that benefit more people. So I understand that standpoint very good, and yeah, you should ask the same question to the storage vendors. Would they invest in techniques that a few set of their customers want, and or would they invest the same amount of money to customers that the broader range of customers? So I think that was something that finalized the discussion for me, at least.
For me, I agree with Michael on the subject that if you are complaining about the feature, or if you are complaining of not having an option to use something on the product, it's better to come to the conference. That's all about that product, and if you want to push on it and get the real reasons on it. This conversation has been going on for a long time for NFS support, and we have the 100% answer on it, so it's done. There's no going back on it. So that's my idea.
Yeah, and just to echo a little bit what Dave just said, NFS support inherently means you'll be running Exchange on a NAS device, a central storage, which honestly to me doesn't make any sense at all. It's Exchange 2010. We first didn't first, but the guidance was there. Hey, JBOD is a really good option. In Exchange 2013, it's like the go-to option for running Exchange. So to me, the question is no longer about if you want to run it on a SAN, fine. But why would you? It's like insanely expensive storage. Even if it's NFS, which is cheaper than running it on fiber or whatever it is, but it doesn't seem like making any sense. So that's why I'm actually disappointed that none of them showed up to have that discussion at all.
But we've already bought it, right?
Well,
who doesn't have a SAN?
You already bought it maybe, but it's still expensive storage.
Yes.
You could use it for anything else, for your SQL server, for instance.
No, it's too slow for that.
Too slow for that. Well, there you have it. It's too slow for your SQL server, but you'd happily run your Exchange on it and have issues. Wow.
I think it's worth making a note too that on this particular topic, or just overall, this could happen with any feature, right? I mean, we do have history of that when there are features that make sense and there's a lot of drive from the customer base that we take being able to use something like vMotion or live migration on an Exchange server. That's something that we never supported before, but we understood and we listened to the community and saw that there was definitely a need there, and we worked with the vendors necessary to make the required fixes to help bring that to people. So I think it's just we're not trying to be an 800-pound gorilla and just say no because we don't want to. I mean, there's definitely a lot of thought and work that goes into helping bring these things when it's the right thing to do for our customers and not going to affect the integrity of the services we give you.
And it's probably the same for public folders then.
There we go. Public folders.
That can of worms.
Is there blood dripping down my back?
Well, now we put everyone to sleep, talk about NFS for 5 minutes. Along on the kind of, what's your beef segment, back to the feature set between service and on-prem. I mean, just as a question, the longer the delta between some feature existing on service versus when it gets it on-prem, doesn't you kind of run the risk of kind of forking the product at some point? Where, if it was a year between this piece on service versus on-prem, the longer that takes, the more they're really out of sync with each other.
So the point is that, how long is the gap between features appearing in one place versus another? So it's possible that some features, I suppose, we might, here's the other thing as well about running a version-based product basis as well for an on-prem product like Exchange. That we have lifecycle, we have a whole bunch of things, and what that means, I know it's not very clear, but what that means is, the service is now evergreen, right? The service is continually moving forward. It's a train that continually moves forward, and you pay for it on a subscription basis, right? The on-prem product, you don't buy it on a subscription basis, you buy versions as well. Now, in order for, so I'm being very, think about the business or the economics behind it, in order to have the next version of Exchange, you need to have something that you're buying in the next version of Exchange as well. Okay, so if the next version of Exchange was just the same as a CU, in effect, it makes it more difficult from a business perspective. So there's a chance that some things could potentially be saved up for on-prem and brought together in one big release. Otherwise, you find that customers would never update and CUs and run forever. And there's an economic discussion here as well as about a software development discussion, right? Exchange is a very large business, and we're trying to find the balance between evergreen service customers who expect these new features to be delivered all the time, and on-prem customers who typically have had a 2 to 3 year kind of life cycle where they refresh and do stuff like that. And then, the question is where you plug the features in so it makes most sense to the on-prem customers as well.
So Valve would be, when we going to see people view on-prem?
I couldn't tell you the answer to that. I mean, you can ask me lots more.
Tuesday.
Yeah, exactly. 2 p.m.
2 p.m.
Right. But it's a multi-dimensional problem. It's not just about feature A checked in. You've got to think about dependencies as well. What kind of dependencies some of these features that we introduce in the service have? Other services, other components. And so you can't really, if some of the features, when you think about things like, some of the group stuff, which is very much dependent on other technologies that we have, you might ship bits and update Exchange, but if you don't have the right SharePoint pieces or the right other pieces in place, then the feature may not work correctly. And can you imagine how hard that is to actually engineer the product? Then in the service where we control all the elements, we know everything's being updated all the time, and so you can build a feature knowing that all of the dependencies are in place. But if in order to light up a feature, you have to have Exchange, SharePoint, Link, all at various stages, and the customer's Link team lags behind, or the SharePoint team lag behind, then how do we make sure that the features still work correctly? It becomes a really complex problem. I'm not trying to escape, I'm just saying it's a really complex problem.
I just want the feature.
I'm curious, and maybe you can't answer this question, but with the way the service is evolving, OWA and the OWA for devices that update fairly frequently, are you seeing a trend in your online customers towards more OWA usage versus Outlook? Can you say, or you don't?
I don't know any numbers, but there's probably a stronger drive of OWA usage we see in the EDU segments. EDU and anywhere where it's more like factory workers, say, where it's just kiosks and such. I mean, Outlook is still highly prevalent. I couldn't give you percentages, like I said, but and there's still highly prevalent versions of Outlook that are ages old, which is always interesting to see out there. As OWA gets better and better, maybe that'll change over time, but there's still obviously at least for today, the integration that you get with the full Outlook client, with everything else running on that PC and all of the offline capability, obviously always got a little bit now, but not quite as much. So I think Outlook is still here to stay, and it's going to get stronger and stronger, but OWA does turn into a more palatable option to people these days. You can do a lot more than you could before.
Let's bring back some luck.
None left.
But actually, Michael, just before you do this, Brian, it reminds me of one thing, which is, you say we still have customers on old versions of Outlook, and they're stuck, right? They have a set of features. The new features are not appearing for them, and it's a slightly tangential kind of thing, but it's take an Exchange 2003 customer today, right? Who's anyone here on Exchange 2003 still? Right, they're not here. Your customers, exactly right. I guess the reason why most people are this, they're into the newer stuff, right? But we know there's tons of people on 2003. 2003 customers are the perfect cloud customer, and the reason for that is they don't really care about their IT. Because they're in the business of doing something else, right? They're maybe, I joke, they're in the business of making cupcakes or pencils or whatever it is they do, and email is just a communication tool they use in their business of making money through making cupcakes or pencils, right? So if one of your customers says, I want to upgrade to Exchange 2013 from 2003, that's pretty difficult already, right? But what's going to happen even if you get to the end of that? In 10 years from now, what are they going to be on? Exchange 2013. And you'll have the same problem all over again, right? And so to me, that's the perfect customer for moving to the cloud and put them, and whether it's, because then you take it out of their hands, they'll always have the new stuff, you never have to worry about future upgrades, and the pain is gone. The same is true of Outlook. You think about it, the Outlook client, the smarter the OA client gets, the features just show up. If we can give them an interface in OA that allows them to do away with the Outlook desktop client, and it works for their scenario, right? Not disconnect or offline OA, right? It's another way of solving that problem, but it gets them out the need to upgrade Outlook to get access to the new features that just show up. Anyway, I'm just throwing that opinion out. Okay, that generates something.
Makes sense. If you have a question, welcome to a mic. Please do. We love the interaction. So, while he's walking
My only response to that would be that's why we have Pro Plus, right?
Okay.
So the constantly upgrading Office client as well. So
Ethan, you're absolutely right. Yeah. So the Pro Plus for Office updates. Yeah. I'm just saying, there's different ways of solving the problem. The thing is those customers that are stuck on the really old stuff, get them onto something which takes the problem away from them, because they're not interested in the technology, and that's totally fine, because they have other ways of doing business. We all love the technology, right? And at Microsoft, we all kind of get excited because we think people want the technology. They want the technology to do business, not for the technology, right? And so get them to, if that's their kind of mindset, move on to something where you give them the technology, but take away the hassle. It's great.
There is an economical part of that, because this type of customers, which have used 2003 for almost 10 years, are often not willing to spend that much money on their solution, because just like you said, it's good enough, they have no more expectations. If you move them to the service, this mean there will be monthly or yearly costs for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
That they are gonna spend a lot of more money within those 10 years on the solution. Well, even the old stuff would meet their requirements, and I fully agree it will bring them benefits. And as a business owner and as a Microsoft partner, I see why we should want that. But currently it's kind of hard to sell this, especially considering some of the areas which are not yet that mature in the service, for instance, offsite backup areas and that. So, just
You're telling me that a customer that's got 10-year-old technology cares about offsite backup?
Well, it basically, typically those customers have traditional backup. They do a backup once in a while. Maybe they even test to restore. I don't know.
Yeah. Really? Who are you kidding? They've got an Exchange 2003 box sitting in a closet, gathering dust. It barely starts up sometimes.
To be honest, we all know it's not just small business.
No.
We have.
No, sure. But there can be business or other reasons why they don't move forward. But
not all customers are logical or act logical.
well, gosh, yeah, and a happy customer should be stuffed and mounted. I've always said that. Like a trophy. Like happy. Save me, man.
We're beyond that point. I personally will not even pretend to be tried as eloquent as Greg is when you talk about business economics, but also there's the fact that when we have a lot of these conversations with customers about, do you want to think about the cloud, do you want to continue doing on-premises, you're talking with the IT level people who, we're very focused on what we do, right? They might not also understand the economics of, potentially they look at the upfront cost per month and they just say, okay, it costs that per month. It costs me this to buy the next version with or without software assurance, whatever they're going to do. But they don't understand, and I won't try to understand it all either, taking those capital funds and moving them over to operational costs that they can then do other tax deductions and such, depending on what countries you're in and so forth, that may have an overall better impact to the customer's bottom line. And sometimes it's just about moving that discussion up to the appropriate level within the company to involve whoever from, maybe there's a financial guy that, you know, there's a dotted line to IT. And it's good to get them in there to just say, look, here's what they're telling us for the options. Do either of these make sense for us? And you might very well say, yeah, just on-premises still makes sense for us, and that's great, but at least open up the door to having the conversation if possible.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said about small companies moving to the cloud because they're good candidates for that. They get up with the latest. I mean, they don't have to manage all that infrastructure. They can be running the latest and greatest in the service far sooner than you would be able to do it on-prem. Who's going to upgrade SharePoint, Office, all that good stuff. Office Pro Plus is great, and I don't know how many. I do a lot of hybrid, a lot of that right now. I'm starting to do more 2013 deployments now that SP1's out. But as people have been doing Office 365 and realizing that they're getting Office Pro Plus with that, install it on 5 machines, it's updated all the time, and the big part that they like is that it runs in a sandbox. It's like AppV running on their desktop. It's super easy to deploy, and they can run side by side. So when they've got these old, you know, Excel 2007 macros that the guy who wrote it is dead, they can still run those.
Was that bad of a macro?
That was that long ago. I was told there'd be beer here. You know, you're able to run those old macros and run the new stuff side by side and run Outlook 2013. Get used to that interface because that stark whiteness just takes a long time to get used to. So when you know, it's a lot of flexibility. They get it for the same price of, yeah, the white, it's catchy. They get all that flexibility and it's all for the same price.
I wanted to follow up on something that Brian said, which is about changing that conversation and who you're having that conversation with. The company I'm with right now does a lot of small business stuff, and we find and excavate a lot of these old Exchange 2003 in a closet, barely functioning type of deployments. So far, every single one has been a fairly easy sell to Office 365 or to some sort of managed service rather than them continuing to have it on premises. Precisely because we've been able to have that conversation with people and show them some of the new features that are available. All you have to do is find one killer feature that they don't have right now that's going to cost them a ton of money to upgrade their entire infrastructure to get to, and then say, look, you, for this one low monthly or not so low yearly price, you're getting that right now, plus all the other stuff that's out there, and as you continue paying that over the course of the years, you're gonna get whatever awesomeness comes down the pike, and you're not gonna have to wait another 10 years and do another big upgrade to do it. So just showing them one or two key features right now that they could use that could impact their business and their bottom line today, plus take all the headache off. Most of them don't even balk at the price. They see it as an investment rather than and an ongoing investment, because you've already given them so much good stuff that they've been missing. They start to take it on trust that there's going to be more good stuff down the road to keep making that investment worthwhile.
Well, before you stand up, do you have any tips on who you found in these smaller businesses are the right people to talk to?
Well, sometimes it's the executive level. More often than not, it's the executive's admin assistant. Yeah, seriously, look for the person who everyone else goes to, who actually gets all the work done.
Right. Make that person's job easier.
Make their job easier. They will bend the ears of all the decision makers for you.
Thank you.
Interesting. This killer app might be Link. Link Online. I've seen it several times. That it's easier because there's typically no data stored in Link. Many of the difficult discussions you don't have to make before too. So it's easier to move to Link Online first. Then customer can get used to the cloud model, the service model. They want to discover the other features. So Link can be that killer app.
Are
Ironically.
you seriously talking about Link at the Exchange conference?
Hey now. You slow?
I feel
Hey now.
guilty. I'm just kidding.
Makes a point though. The death of small business server probably gave Office 365 adoption a bit of a kick along too, at least in Australia. Australia's got probably a number of hurdles compared to other parts of the world, which is why we may be behind online adoption. The first was, if you've just bought a bunch of kit and deployed it, you don't want to throw all that out and go to the cloud. The next one is did I say kitten?
Yes, you said kitten.
Kitten?
Yeah.
I'll throw all
Deploying
that kit out. I'm sorry, I'm speaking Australian.
That's 365.
I'd like a kitten.
Yeah.
Did you eat it whole?
I've lost my point now. I think one of the other hurdles has been the offshore data centers. So there's a data sovereignty question I think that's still got to be solved for Australia. To my knowledge, we're still in Hong Kong and Singapore, so that's the current state of play. But that's a good point made there. I mean, a lot of small businesses I know of were using Skype for basic Office IM and things like that. And the selling point to get the full Office 365 feature set as a replacement for their small business server, email, SharePoint, Link combination is pretty killer. And all they're left with is maybe a Foundation or Essentials or whatever it is, Windows server just running basic file print, line of business applications, and that's it.
Yeah, go ahead.
So going along with that, I'm not a consultant, but I previously worked for a full service business services firm at taxes, accounting, and they eventually started doing IT. And their bread and butter was the small and medium business that wanted to completely offload the IT and do the whole managed IT stuff. So I mean, there was a lot of the 2003 and a lot of the small business server. And I've kept in contact with those guys through the years, and one of the things that they've used to get people to upgrade was the fact that Microsoft is ending support. So, and it ends officially, extended support ends next week, right?
Yeah.
So, and that was one thing that they started using last year is, hey, this is what's gonna happen, and I'll support you as well as I can, but you need to realize that if your database is completely hosed up, I'm not super geek, I may not be able to help you out. And they oh, well, we can't have that, what can we do? And that's how they made a big play for Office 365 for that.
I kind of agree. That's the slightly kind of threatening approach, though, right? That's not the benefit approach.
You're right.
Which I mean, if it works, and so be it. But the chances are with some customers they'll say, "Well, I'm going to take my chances."
and some of them have.
Right.
But at the same
so,
time, these are the people who don't, like you said, they don't care about IT.
No, they've got other
That's
things
why
to
they
do,
have.
but
Yeah.
Sure. So there's different ways to approach the conversation, and maybe if that works for some, so be it. But we have plenty of customers who keep running old stuff, and they will continue to do so. So
Sure.
I think there's different ways to crack it, isn't it?
Cool. Thanks.
I just got one quick point. When you look at small businesses, they don't have the same resources. They don't have a dedicated IT guy. One way to justify the cost of a subscription is talk about the last outage they had. And removing the headache of that outage and what's the cost of that downtime, that'll justify the cost to go to Office 365. And that's why it makes so much sense, for the small business arena.
Yeah, some of these customers are really lucky. They have no outages in recent memory, but they'll remember that Office 365. I heard about the day that it went down. Yeah.
Well, I mean, small businesses. I mean, I remember from years back doing that kind of stuff, and people could lose their entire mailboxes, and they're like, "Oh well, I'll just start again."
Amen.
Yeah, whatever. Most of it was rubbish anyway. But yeah, different ways to do it.
Sure. Go ahead.
All right. We're talking about small business, but my question is for larger business, and I guess a lot of us here are still on-prem. So, as far as moving to Office 365, what are some things or what are some challenges that our clients or our users may experience during that whole transition process? What are some things that, we can prepare for beforehand and kind of?
Well, it all depends on what your end goal is, what you have today, the process you're taking to get there, how you're going there. Obviously, if they're happy where they are today, then you have an expectation to live up to. If your migration is not planned and goes down the drain, then obviously they won't be happy. So it all comes down on how you attack that. As if you would upgrade an on-premises environment, if you go from one version to the other one, you plan, you make sure that goes according to how it should, and then your users should be happy. And I don't think it's any different with Office 365 at all. Can you expect bumps along the road? Yeah, sure. That has always been the case. That's also the case. Moving to the cloud has its own challenges. They are just different challenges, and they can as easily be overcome as long as you take them into account. And I think that's why conferences as MEC are here to talk about those challenges. There's been a ton of sessions about migration to the cloud, on-premises, cross-forest, with really good information. That's why we all gather here and talk about that. So, yeah, my take on that is you'll always run into issues. You can plan as much as you want to. There's always that little hiccup that'll keep you up at night and give you that one user who complains about it. But at the end of the day, wherever they're going to be at, if they're happy where they are, that's what you want to do. If they're not happy where they end up at, then I think you chose the wrong solution.
Yeah.
So moving just to move is a very bad idea. There has to be a reason. So,
but most times it's financial, right? Most times it's based on money. It's not based on anything else.
Yeah, okay. I see a top-down approach where it used to be bottom-up, but even when the decision is being made at the executive level, like, hey, I want to save money and go to Office 365, which I, by the way, don't buy, but that's an entirely different discussion. It's...
Remember, he's a consultant.
Yeah.
I'm a consultant.
All right, so,
Yeah, sure.
all right, so I just want to add on to that. Excuse me. I think it's very important to do a lot of proper planning and design. It's just like a migration, okay, for a large company. So what you're trying to do is mitigate user impact. You want it to be a good experience for them. So plan it out right, test it like heck, know what you're getting into before you get started. Pick a good pilot group, have them come over, someone who will champion it. If you want it to succeed, make sure they'll champion it. And get a lot of good impact from there. Know what works, what doesn't work, because it's not, coexistence, especially during that time, is not perfect. And just know what to expect. And so you can let your users know, those pilot users can champion your cause, and that's what will make it successful.
Okay, well, thank you. The part A-B to that was from the guys I work with on the team. So assuming a lot of these companies, say if you're a service provider or not, assuming your business or a lot of your users move to 365, what role as an admin will you play? Is your job gone? I hear a lot of talk about, you can monitor or respond or come up with work on other topics, but I haven't heard anything definitive. So what other services or what other options do you have as an admin on architect or whatever your role was in Exchange? I just want something honest. Like, is it going in 3 to 5 years? Is it still around? Do you just start doing Link or SharePoint? Do you give it up? Like, what's the...
No.
Yeah.
Didn't you see the keynote? You'll be partying all day long.
Getting pats on the back.
So, you'll be around. You'll be doing other stuff. Don't be afraid. I've never been, as a consultant, doing mainly on-premises Exchange. I have never been as busy as I am today. And I'll be busy for quite a while doing what I do. And I'll just adapt. By the time everyone is running Office 365, I'll find something else to do. Hopefully by then I'm not old and gray. I'll probably be.
Or balder.
So what will you be doing? There's a lot of identity management. That is something really interesting. If you really want to do something, you're afraid that you're going to be out of a job with Exchange. Fine. If you want to believe that, Okay,
No,
but
that's-
I'm not judging. I'm just saying there's a lot of people that are afraid for a reason. I understand why, but identity management is a good place to start with. There's a lot of things, a lot of challenges. Go and explore that. It's a very difficult place to be at, and it's gonna be easier. You know, Exchange back in the days was more. No, I'm gonna shut up. Anyway. So that's my take. I think everyone has to find something where he or she is comfortable with, but I don't honestly believe that.
Couldn't hurt to learn Link, though.
For example, yes.
I'm talking about from an administrative standpoint, you know, there's nothing really left to do, I think, right?
No, there is a lot of administration. There's
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the company, right? I mean, they might just, a lot of guys are gonna get retasked to something else. I mean, there's probably many companies where they don't need that role anymore, but companies tend to keep people usually, Of course, you could argue that with voice deployments with Link, they don't usually need phone guys anymore, so once Link's done.
Anyway, I guess it's almost time to wrap up. It's been very fun these past few days. I did want to end with two things. First of all, I really appreciated the tablet. What did you guys think of that?
Yes.
Awesome.
Although it's not as cool as the Xbox One the Build guys got today.
Boo-hoo. That's going to be an edit point.
And those are really heavy. They're going to have a lot of trouble getting them home.
So anyway, in light of a giveaway, no, we're not giving away tablets. Just to make that point clear, I think Paul has something to announce.
So I tweeted before the session today that look, I come all the way here from Australia, and it's been great to be here. Microsoft's hospitality's been great, the conference has been great. You've all been great. I've met lots of you and talked to you in the hallways and at the parties, and I've had a great time. I'm giving away to anyone who is interested a free copy of my ebook. It's called Mastering Message Tracking. It's all about message tracking in Exchange Server 2010 and 2013. If you're interested, come and see me at the side of the stage with a business card, or just give me your email address. I'll send those out over the next few days.
Cool, thanks. So this being said, I would like to thank everyone for being here for the recording, but I would specifically like to thank Ryan, Greg, and Jeff for volunteering to be slaughters today. So thanks for being here, guys. Really appreciate it.
I'll be giving away the t-shirt I'm wearing at the end of this. If everyone wants it.
Don't all rush.
Another edit point.
Only briefly used.
Slightly used yammer shirt.
Smells like yams.
Say it smells like yams.
That's just Greg.
Oh.
Can't smell worse than those nasty bags.
Still, they do make you look like a Pan Am stewardess.
Most of the people who hear this don't know what you're talking about. That's easy to confuse.
That's why the cool kids are here.
I just get edited.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so thanks everyone. It's like
Yeah, seriously, thanks everyone.